His career began as a faculty member at the University of Louisiana at DeGard. When he first appeared in the classroom, his glasses slid down, his hair was greasy, his skin glistened with acne, and most students mistook him for one of them. Martin wasn't much older than his first students after earning his master's degree from the California Institute of Technology in his 20s. "My name is Mr. Greenwood. You will call me Mr. Greenwood or sir," he stated with a confident tone. "I don't accept any deferments. If you are here, study. If not, then don't study. Simple. I don't hand out stars for attendance. There are no practice tests. Miss a test, miss a grade. Exceptions are only possible in extreme cases, such as hospitalization, death of a loved one. The flu is not an excuse. You need diapers. You'll have a garbage can by your desk." "Is that serious?" a young blonde woman with blue eyes asked. "Yes, ma'am, and I hope you are too," he replied sternly. Students who studied, signed up, and asked questions thought he was the best teacher on the ULD campus. Those who didn't called him the worst, even worse than math teacher Professor Litcham, who was disliked by the students. When PC Nation needed a supervisor for their data center in Elgin, Louisiana, they chose Martin Greenwood. He cut his classes to 3 and stopped advising students to devote himself fully to running the data center. Martin ran the center as strictly as he ran his classrooms. He had no tolerance for slackers or incompetence. PC Nation's data center became a key location for the company, not just a department. Martin was paid well. The university even offered to pay his tuition for his doctorate. PC Nation also paid for him to travel to other offices to train staff and strengthen small data centers. His skills and administrative style were admired, but also feared. By the age of 26, Martin Greenwood had grown to a massive height of 307 feet 7 inches. Every time he stepped out of his car to the doors of the data center, he had to breathe with difficulty. He was often dizzy, and even on the coldest days, his face was covered with sweat. Dr. Donidima invited the young man in and gave Martin all the information about his condition. He announced Martin had prediabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and heart problems. "Another candy bar? Another pork chop? You're on the precipice. When was the last time you did squats? Did push-ups? These aren't rhetorical questions because I know you haven't," the doctor said politely. Martin nodded silently and left the office. He took this case as seriously as any other. After eating a half-gallon of mint chocolate chip ice cream and a package of Oreo cookies, Martin Greenwood casually glanced in the mirror and hated what he saw. By the fall semester at ULD, he had lost weight to 247 pounds. He cut his hair short and threw out t-shirts and jeans, replacing them with button-down shirts, polos, and khaki pants. LASIK surgery allowed him to get rid of his glasses. Some of his female students began sitting at the front of the class, leaning over so he could see their blouses, or leaning back so he could look at their skirts. Martin was already used to this kind of attention from girls who weren't particularly good in his class. He was used to some of them hoping to exchange sexual favors for good grades. But some of these girls were getting high grades without such exchanges. At the data center, some female employees found an excuse to drop by Martin's office. Samantha, the receptionist, would straighten up as he entered the building's lobby, showing off her form and greeting him in a panting voice. Martin continued to follow the diet and exercise routine he had mastered at the Fat Farm in Arizona. He occasionally took his sister with him to get her opinion when shopping for women's clothing. "Mr. Greenwood, is that you?" came the voice of an attractive blonde woman as Martin walked through the Burns & Burns supermarket, busy searching the shelves for something. "Yes, ma'am?" Martin replied politely, embarrassed by the attention. "Hi. You probably don't remember me, and how could you? I failed your information analysis course," the woman mumbled as she touched his arm. Martin was now 29 years old and weighed 220 pounds, mostly of muscle. He wondered when this beauty had appeared in his class. Surely he would remember such large breasts, long legs, and blue eyes. "Mom, can I have this?" A miniature version of the woman asked. Martin looked at the 8 or 9-year-old girl and the box of sugar cereal she wanted. The woman couldn't stop smiling, tossed the box into her grocery cart. "Oh my God, 8 or 9 years ago. Then I found out I was PG with Dorothy." The woman purred. Martin looked at her dumbfounded. How could she remember him from back then? After all, he was a chubby guy with greasy hair, acne, and thick glasses. "Are you still teaching?" the woman continued. "Yes, ma'am. 3 classes a semester," Martin said, starting to push the cart away. "You look great," the woman said, taking her time pushing her cart to keep up. "Mommy, we need to buy grits," the girl interjected. "Look, I'll let you get back to shopping," the woman said. "How about we meet for coffee or something?" "Yeah, sure," Martin replied. She pulled a card out of her purse and held it out to Martin. He took the card and politely said goodbye. As he continued shopping, Martin wondered how Amanda Suarez had recognized him. Even his mom's neighbor didn't recognize Martin when he returned from the Arizona heat. He hadn't had time to call Amanda, but she'd already called him the next morning at the ULD office. Without letting him get a word in edgewise, Amanda chatted cheerfully, telling him about being in his first class, failing, dropping out of college, and marrying Diego Suarez. "That's why you didn't find my name on the lists," Amanda grinned. "I was Amanda Field then." Didn't recognize it, Martin thought, but didn't speak out loud. Anyway, family life didn't work out with Diego, so that just left Dorothy and I, 2 independent girls, Amanda continued to babble. "Ms. Suarez, I have to go to class," Martin interrupted her, interrupting her joyful cries. "Yes, I have to work," Amanda agreed. "Have you ever eaten at Dusty's?" "It's been a while," Martin agreed, remembering the menu of the not-so-healthy diner. "Well, it's been too long." Amanda laughed playfully. "I'll see you around 7? "Sure, okay," Martin shrugged. Amanda's breasts drew the eye as Martin sat down across from her. Dorothy wasn't around. During lunch, Amanda did most of the talking. Amanda agreed to go on a bike ride with Martin through unincorporated Pin Oak the following Saturday. She showed up in tight shorts and a top, on her bike, looking like it had never been used. Dorothy wasn't with her again. 4 months after their chance meeting at the Burns & Burns grocery store, Amanda and Dorothy moved in with Martin. Martin asked Amanda to help him furnish a room for Dorothy. He also bought things that were supposed to please the 8-year-old, almost 9, according to her sister. But Dorothy was an unhappy child. She seemed to be deliberately trying to hurt Martin. She spoke disrespectfully of her mother. "She's just upset about the divorce. Give her time," Amanda said. 2 months after the move, Amanda informed Martin that she was pregnant. Martin went out and bought an engagement ring. Less than a year after their chance meeting, Martin and Amanda became husband and wife. Dorothy's hostility seemed to intensify when her mother and Martin married. "You're not my daddy," Dorothy often repeated when Martin tried to talk to her, asked her to clean up after herself, or watch how she treated her mother. 2 months after the wedding, Amanda lost the baby. It seemed to Martin that Amanda took the loss calmly. A week later, she smiled and suggested they try again. Martin and Diego, Amanda's first husband, maintained a friendly relationship. More often than not, it was Amanda who drove Dorothy to her father's house. On those rare occasions when Martin himself drove Dorothy to her father's for the weekend, he always got out of the car, greeted, and shook Diego's hand. "Why are you doing this?" Dorothy pounced on Martin when he picked her up after the weekend with Diego. "Do what?" Martin asked. "Talking to my father," Dorothy grinned. "You know he hates you, right?" "How he feels about me is irrelevant," shrugged Martin. "He's your father and I'm your stepfather. We're both part of your life, so it's important that we get along." "You're not part of my life," Dorothy muttered. Thursday evening, Amanda brought Martin a vodka tonic, even adding a slice of lime. Martin looked up from his book and looked at his wife in silence. He could hear something she called music ringing and clanking on Dorothy's stereo. The only other sound in the house was the quiet whirring of the air conditioner and the humming of the refrigerator. Amanda had asked Martin to fix that humming, but he admitted he had no idea how to handle such a task. "Baby, you know I love you to bits, don't you?" Amanda said, taking a seat on the beige leather couch. Martin said nothing. He took a sip and nodded approvingly. Usually she added too much tonic to the drink. This time there was just enough to soften the harshness of the vodka. "Yeah, there's something I've always wanted to try, Amanda said, her blue eyes gazing intently into his brown ones. Martin was still silent, looking at her. He could hear Dorothy trying to sing along with the slurred voice of some androgynous singer. Amanda became nervous at Martin's silence. She frowned, almost angrily. He took another sip. "Yeah, well, I think I'll just say it outright," Amanda finally stated. Martin waited. Amanda sighed and looked away. "I love you. I really do. You and I are soulmates. That first day you walked into class, I realized it," Amanda said, hesitating. "But there's one thing that's always been on my wish list, and—" Martin was still silent. He was waiting. Amanda twisted her hands, then pulled herself together. "I've always wondered what it would be like with a black man," Amanda admitted. "So when are you and Dorothy moving out?" Martin asked. "What?" Amanda opened her mouth in surprise. Martin looked at her. She was a truly beautiful woman. Her blonde hair reached her shoulders, framing her angelic face perfectly. Her blue eyes were large and bright. Her nose was thin, and her lips were plump and light pink. Her breasts had been surgically enlarged, although Amanda claimed Diego had made her do it. Martin doubted it. He had never been able to get Amanda to do anything she didn't want to do. "Go away on your own, Martin. We're not leaving," Amanda said. "You're telling me you want to sleep with another man," Martin said. "Martin, watch your language." "Dorothy," Amanda warned. "She's heard that word many times," said Martin. "Well, she doesn't need to hear it anymore," said Amanda. "Anyway, you want to sleep with a black guy, but you can only do that if we're not married," Martin said as he finished his drink. "So when are you and Dorothy moving out?" He picked up the book again. "It will only be once," Amanda said. "Once or 100 times, it doesn't matter," Martin said, peering down at his page. "As long as we're married, the answer is no." "But that doesn't mean anything," Amanda said with a whimper in her voice. "I'll just cross it off my wish list, and we'll—" "The answer is no, Amanda. As long as you and I are married, you won't do that. But you seem to care a hell of a lot about it. So when are you and Dorothy moving out?" "We're not moving out," Amanda snapped back. "Okay, so you're not sleeping with black guys," Martin said. "Martin, it's just one time, and then it'll be like it was before," Amanda objected, flashing her blue eyes angrily. "No, Amanda, it won't," Martin sighed. "Let's say you and this guy date, you sleep together, and he turns out to be nothing special, nothing worth writing home about." "See?" Amanda said. "Nothing to worry about." "But maybe it's just Stephen," Martin continued. "Or maybe Freddie will turn out to be someone who knows how to do it right. You'll want to try it with Freddie. What if he really is a master in bed? And here come the marriage vows being broken again." "No, I won't," Amanda denied. "As soon as I— Or let's look at the other side of the coin. Maybe Stephen will turn out to be a no-brainer." "You mean you'd be okay coming back to me, old and boring?" Martin asked. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you, darling," said Amanda. "Nonsense," said Martin. "You're going to lie there and remember your night with Stephen or Freddie or Ambrose. Am I just supposed to put up with my wife fantasizing about her black lover?" "But I won't," Amanda objected. "That would be— What else is on your wish list? Extreme lovemaking? You with another woman? You with a circus clown and a midget? And I'm just supposed to say, 'Oh, that's okay, honey, do your list'? I don't think so." "The answer is no," Martin said and rose to his feet. "Dorothy, can you turn the sound down, please? I'm leaving tomorrow night. Amanda declared, also rising. Where do you want me to bring your things? Martin asked. Amanda didn't answer. Martin wondered why she wasn't surprised, that she was surprised that he knew the names of the 3 African Americans she worked with. He frowned when Dorothy turned the music up even louder. Martin went to bed at his usual time. He could hear Amanda typing on the computer in their home office. He didn't say goodnight to her or wait for her to come to bed. The next morning, Martin grumbled as he entered the kitchen. Amanda had made waffles for herself and Dorothy. Dorothy smirked when Amanda announced that he was having breakfast alone. Fine. Martin smiled and quickly made himself a 3-egg omelet. And it will just be you and Dorothy at dinner tonight, Amanda said, challenging Martin. I have plans. Martin said nothing. He only shook his head in response to Dorothy's indignant grumbling. Finished eating, he put his plate in the dishwasher. Hello? Amanda said, a little shocked when Martin opened the garage door. Hello? Martin asked. Aren't you going to kiss me goodbye? Amanda asked. No, Martin replied and walked out of the house. Martin had an 8 a.m. class, then drove to the data center and immersed himself in his work. At lunchtime, he called Amanda. Since they had first made love, he had made a habit of calling her on his lunch hour. She didn't answer the call. Martin had left a message saying that she should seriously reconsider her plans for that evening. The consequences would be severe. Yeah, being a geek is profitable, Martin thought, checking his wife's cell phone calls and her computer. Stephen Collins, you're not to be envied, brother. Martin finished his workday and drove home. As he entered the house, he shuddered as he heard Dorothy's music at an unbearable volume. Amanda's car wasn't in the garage, but he hadn't expected to see it. Dorothy, turn it down, shouted Martin. There was no response. Martin tried Dorothy's bedroom door, but it was locked. So he opened the hall closet and flicked a switch, turning off the electricity in Dorothy's room. Hey, what are you doing? Dorothy shouted indignantly. Open the door, Martin shouted. Back off, you're not my father, Dorothy yelled. Martin then dialed a number on the phone. As he waited for the answer, he smiled. Dorothy stomped into her room, trying various electronic devices without success. It never occurred to the 10-year-old to walk down the hall to the hall closet and check the light switch. Martin rose from his chair when he heard a car stop outside. He went to the door just as the knocking sounded. Dorothy, gather everything you need, school clothes, textbooks, Martin shouted as he opened the front door. Fuck you, you're not my father, Dorothy shouted through the closed door. No, but I want to, Diego said, opening the door lock with a butter knife. Come on, young lady, we'll wash that nasty mouth with soap and water, then you'll gather what you need, okay? Martin and Diego talked while Dorothy gathered her clothes and books into the 2 garbage bags Martin had provided. He smirked as he watched Dorothy wipe her tongue, trying to get rid of the taste of soap. I have to go to the bathroom, Dorothy suddenly announced. Go on, Martin shrugged. Too bad my girl was so mean to you, Diego said. Mom, pick up the phone, Dorothy whispered into her cell phone. Didn't you notice? It's not working, Martin said into the closed bathroom door. I canceled your phone this afternoon. You damned asshole. You can't do that, yelled Dorothy. You like the taste of ivory soap, huh? Roared Diego, grabbing Dorothy's arm as she left the bathroom. You're not completely clean until you're clean as a beast, Martin smirked, repeating an old television commercial. Daddy? Stop it, Dorothy protested as her tongue was once again smeared with a wet bar of soap. I hate you, shouted Dorothy to both men as she descended the stairs carrying 2 garbage bags. I'll bring whatever I find on Sunday. Are you going to work? Martin asked. Sunday is great, said Diego, and threw both bags into the trunk of his truck. Hey, can you give me a ride to Casa Ole? Martin asked, checking his cell phone. No, I guess not, Diego said. You like this place? Manny's is better, trust me. Their salsa is the best. Martin locked up the house and then climbed into Diego's truck. For the first 2 minutes, they drove in silence. Did you ask Amanda for a breast augmentation? Martin asked, unable to think of anything else to talk about. What? Diego grinned unhappily. Good God, no, I hate them. I swear it was all you, Martin said. Bullshit. Begged and begged to make them. $3,000. Made them the same time she had her tubes tied, Diego said, shaking his head in disgust. Tubes? Martin interjected. Yes. Wanted me to do a vasectomy. I told her I'd do it when hell freezes over too, Diego said, pulling into the parking lot of a Mexican restaurant. Over there, Martin said. The blue Lexus. Thanks, Diego, Martin said, extending his hand. Good luck, Diego said, shaking Martin's hand. Bye, Dorothy, Martin said, peering into the seat of the truck. Go to... Dorothy growled. Martin closed the door so he wouldn't have to listen to the angry girl. He wondered if she would deserve a third mouthwash, or perhaps even a spanking for her profanity. He used his key and unlocked the Lexus. As Martin got into the car, his blood pressure skyrocketed. Amanda was only a few inches shorter than him, but the driver's seat was tilted far back, as if a very tall person was behind the wheel. Martin quickly flipped through his cell phone, found the number he'd just added, and pressed send. Yes? A female voice answered. Hey, Nicole, tell me where Steven is? Martin asked. Yeah, playing ball with his boys, said Nicole. And who's that? Well, my wife isn't one of his guys, said Martin, leaning the driver's seat forward. And as far as I know, Casa Ola doesn't have a basketball court. He disconnected the call, started the car, and drove to his house. Once at the house, Martin reprogrammed the alarm access code, the garage door keypad, and the keyless entry code for the Lexus. He then grabbed a bag from Home Depot from the passenger seat of the car and began changing the locks on the house. The house had belonged to him before he and Amanda were married, and now, after finding out there was no pregnancy, Martin was sure he could get an annulment. The Lexus was his too. Martin was the one who had bought it, paid the monthly payments, his name was on the title and insurance. Martin hoped Amanda would try to pay for tonight's dinner. He reported that all of Amanda's credit cards had been stolen. She thought she'd done the smart thing by keeping the only MasterCard in her maiden name, Field. But a simple check of her phone records showed Martin that the card existed. The new cards will be delivered in a few days. The joint credit cards will be destroyed immediately upon receipt. He would personally deliver the Field card to her new address, whatever it might be. The cell phone was also his. He would pay the monthly bill for it and for Dorothy's phone. Martin's last act before leaving the office in the afternoon was to cancel service on the two phones. After he finished changing the locks on the front and back doors and the door leading from the garage to the house, Martin took a light beer and sat in a chair. Then he couldn't take it anymore and cried. His tears didn't last long. Just 3 minutes later, just as he began to mourn a marriage he no longer wanted, his cell phone rang. He didn't recognize the number. He had Stephen and Nicole Collins's phone numbers. So he answered it. Martin, my car. It's been stolen, Amanda shouted. And my phone is out of service. Oh, and my credit cards and... Wow, it's not easy being you, is it? Martin said. Whose phone is that? This guy. I'm at Casa Ole. He let me use his phone, said Amanda. Maybe he'll let you sleep over at his house, since you don't have a house anymore, Martin said, and hung up. Martin took a sip of his beer and set the can aside. He had things that needed to be done. He got to his feet and went to the garage. From the trunk of his car, Martin pulled out 6 cardboard boxes that he had bought that morning at Huval's Texaco. He was already on the 4th box of Amanda's clothes when there was a sharp knock on the door. Martin looked at his watch and nodded approvingly. The policemen were on time. Martin, my key doesn't work, Amanda shouted. Sir, Mrs. Greenwood reported her car stolen, the policeman said. Officer, please don't let Mrs. Greenwood into my house, Martin said as he stepped out onto the porch. What, you can't do that, it's my... Amanda hissed. The deed to the house, bought before our marriage to Mrs. Greenwood. Notice her name is nowhere on this piece of paper, Martin said, showing the policeman the document. And as for her car, he pressed the remote control he had attached to his belt, and the garage door rose. Amanda rushed into the garage. Martin nodded slowly to himself. Amanda was wearing a short skirt and nice stockings and 4-inch heels. He knew she hadn't worn this outfit to work. Her boss would have sent her home to change into a more appropriate outfit. "Sir?" the policeman asked with a stern face. "Like I said, only my name is on the title and registration book. I pay the bills, insurance, maintenance," said Martin. "Mrs. Greenwood does not have any rights to the vehicle." Amanda repeatedly tried to unlock the car. Martin smiled sadly and took the key out of her hand. "Leave it alone, Amanda. It's my car," he said. "You bastard! It's my car. You bought it for me," Amanda screamed, trying to claw at Martin's face. "Ma'am, stop. Stop right now," the policewoman ordered, grabbing Amanda's arm. "You slimy bastard," Amanda shouted at Martin, pushing him away with her foot. "Any chance you can straighten this out?" Another policeman asked. "Let me ask you this. You're sitting there reading a good book, and then your wife comes up and says she wants to sleep with another man. You tell her no, but she goes ahead and does it anyway," Martin said, as Amanda stopped struggling with the female officer. "Are you in the mood to deal with this? Ma'am, is there somewhere you can stay tonight?" the policeman asked Amanda. "Here, this is my house," Amanda growled. "No, ma'am, it's not," said the policeman. "So, friends? Family?" "Oh, and Dorothy and her father," Martin said. That set off another round of swearing and fighting. Martin agreed with the policewoman to have Amanda pick up some of the items. When she saw the boxes and realized that many of her belongings were already packed, Amanda burst into tears. Martin and the policeman looked at each other, then looked away. Both felt uncomfortable. It didn't mean anything," Amanda bellowed at Martin. "It meant something to me," Martin said, raising his left hand, which flaunted an engagement ring. "But it was just..." Amanda sobbed. "You just broke your wedding vows. You told me that my feelings meant nothing, that my opinion didn't matter to you in the slightest," said Martin. "Now pack your things and leave, okay?" "But where?" Amanda wailed. "Maybe Stephen and Nicole have a place for you?" Martin suggested. With the help of the policewoman, Amanda gathered her work and casual clothes. Then, in a daze, she walked out of the house, shuffling her feet. "Good luck, kid," the policewoman said quietly. The policewoman said nothing, just walked out the door, following her partner. Martin quietly closed and locked the door. He sipped from the warm can of beer again, then let the tears roll down his face. On Monday morning, after a long weekend spent worrying about the house, Martin went to an appointment with his new lawyer, Lilia Jones. Clara, a plain-looking receptionist, smiled welcomingly and offered Martin coffee or water. "Well, let's think about it," Martin smiled. "Coffee is caffeine, and I'm nervous enough as it is. Water, like coffee, will lead to a full bladder, and I'm here for an hour. Halfway through our meeting, I'm going to need to use the restroom, and it's going to be the most expensive restroom of my life." "Most people just say, 'No thanks,'" Clara smiled. "No, thank you," Martin smiled back, and Clara laughed. "Mr. Greenwood?" Lilia asked, coming out of her office. Lilia Jones was an attractive redhead with a warm smile. As she turned, Martin's gaze fell involuntarily on her full buttocks, and he felt his khakis stirring. He followed the woman into her office and sat down in a chair. Lilia smiled. Her handshake was firm. But she immediately informed Martin that she did not represent spouses who were trying to cheat each other out of their fair share of the marital estate. "They call me a shark," Lilia admitted. "But that's only because I fiercely defend my clients." Martin nodded. Then he recounted all of Amanda's deceptions. He showed Lilia screenshots of her Facebook page with the pregnancy announcement. He then showed her the pregnancy loss announcement. "Oh," Lilia sighed, saddened by the seeming loss of Martin and Amanda. Except for three things, Martin said. First, there was never any confirmation of a pregnancy. 2, there was no confirmation of a spontaneous abortion. And third, Amanda Field Suarez Greenwood underwent tubal ligation surgery before I met her at the Burns & Burns store. Lilia said, dropping her jaw resolutely. When I arranged to meet you, Martin continued, I was aware of the first and second points. After a brief conversation with her ex-husband Diego Suarez, I knew about the third point, that Amanda had her tubes tied. I wanted a simple divorce. And now, I want a full annulment of the marriage. Lilia quickly amended the paperwork. Clara came over and certified Martin's signatures. As Clara bent over to stamp the seal, Martin noticed her blouse. It looked modest at first glance, but Clara had large breasts held up by a lacy bra that seemed on the verge of bursting. When and where do you want to hand over the paperwork to Ms. Greenwood? Asked Lilia, distracting Martin from his observations. At work, I guess, he replied with a note of sadness. Honestly, I don't know where she's staying now. And when? Continued Lilia. Whenever. Her office closes at 5:30, no 15, Martin said as Clara left the office. 5:31? It's a ghost town. Martin knew exactly when Lilia Jones had filed the papers to sue Amanda Greenwood. His cell phone buzzed. At that moment, however, he had a meeting with a female employee who was pitching her marketing idea. Don't you understand? The woman asked. That's what voicemail is for. Martin smiled sadly. I'm busy. Have you thought about contacting Pine Grove? Maybe they'll let us teach a few lessons to their customers? Pine Grove, Mr. Greenwood, that's brilliant, the woman said as Martin's phone buzzed again. The employee promised to contact Pine Grove's assisted living as well as Jack's Creek Center. Martin reminded her to check their Wi-Fi capabilities. As she closed the door behind Martin, the woman noticed his face change from calm confidence to unspeakable pain. She almost rushed back into the office, almost enclosed him in a motherly embrace. After standing for a few minutes, Martin stoically checked his voice messages. Amanda Greenwood didn't seem to be taking their breakup as hard. Her messages were screaming tirades, declarations of how she and her lawyer would berate him in the divorce. This is my fucking house. What, I'm on the goddamn phone, Martin heard Amanda shout. He pressed 9 and saved that message, then pressed and listened to the next message. Well, thanks a hell of a lot. Now I have to go to my stupid boss's office. Hope you're satisfied, dumbass, Amanda muttered. Amanda continued her tirade, explaining to Martin that he was overreacting, considering that she and Stephen hadn't even slept together. She argued that the whole ordeal was completely unwarranted. Mr. Greenwood? Heard Martin, pressing the 9 button. Yes, Samantha? Martin asked, straining his voice. Is this Samantha, Ms. Jones on the phone? Asked Samantha. Martin couldn't stand the way Samantha ended each sentence as if it were a question. She was attractive. Her body language clearly betrayed an interest in him, but he knew he wouldn't be able to sustain a conversation with her for longer than 2 minutes. Thanks, Samantha, Martin said, already pressing the blinking light. No problem, Samantha replied readily. Another thing that annoyed Martin about Samantha was that the proper response to thank you should have been, you're welcome, not no problem. Mrs. Jones? Asked Martin. Ms. Greenwood was handed in at 3:30 this afternoon, confirmed Lily Jones. Martin Boudreau, our bailiff, delivered the papers to her place of employment. Yes, I have 2 voicemails letting me know that, Martin said. Somehow Amanda had gotten her attorney, Nicole Banks, to schedule a meeting in Judge Marie Robichaud's office just 2 weeks after Amanda had received the subpoena. Lilia's smile reassured Martin a little, but when Clara brought him a cup of coffee, a smile appeared on his face. Clara leaned over to hand him the cup, and he could smell her musky perfume. Judge Marie Robichaud had a horse face. Martin thought she was rather unattractive, but he noticed a picture frame on her desk with herself, an attractive older man, and 2 children with the same faces. Also hanging on the wall next to her diplomas were 5 or 6 framed pictures, obviously drawn by her children. The best moment is when we went to Mardi Gras in New Orleans, Marie smiled, seeing Martin's attention riveted on the pictures. And this is when Daddy took them fishing. I don't know why Bobby drew them with fish. They didn't catch anything, did they? She lost her smile as she saw tears come to Martin's eyes. Martin smiled sadly as Lilia reached for the box of tissues. That was the fish they were planning on catching next time, Martin explained as he wiped his eyes with a napkin. Yeah, I guess so, Marie said, taking another look at the drawing. They're so cute. Could we? Amanda stopped talking when Nicole put her hand on her arm. She frowned as Nicole shook her head slightly. Martin looked at Nicole Banks for a moment. The woman looked young, too young for a lawyer. Her dark brown hair hung down to her knees as she stood. A scattering of freckles settled on her snub nose, and her brown eyes looked wide and innocent. Her clothes were cut to order and looked expensive. Her figure was slender, almost boyish, which gave her an added youthfulness. A petition for annulment is unusual, to say the least, especially when two people have been living together for over a year, Judge Marie Robichaud began. And my client doesn't understand how or why Mr. Greenwood is pushing for an annulment, Nicole began. Jesus, Martin, at least grow up somehow, Amanda interrupted her attorney. Here he is, let it be a black guy, I wanted to sleep with him. Accept it, huh? Ms. Banks, Marie warned. I didn't even get to sleep with him, Amanda continued, despite the lawyer putting a hand on her shoulder. Oh, and thanks for calling his wife, huh? Do you know that Stephen had to get 5 stitches where she cut him? Amanda, calm down, Nicole barked. Martin looked at his attorney. He noticed her brown eyes staring intently at Nicole and Amanda. Lilia's gaze then shifted to Judge Robichaud. What do you say, Ms. Banks? Asked Marie finally. Like you, Your Honor, we are also puzzled by Mr. Greenwood's request for an annulment, Nicole continued. Divorce, yes? But an annulment? To dismiss their happy marriage as if it never existed? We're here today to ask for counseling, hoping to bring the marriage back and provide adversity to the minor child, Dorothy Suarez, back home to the loving, happy family she previously lived with. Nicole nodded affirmatively, answering Judge Marie Robichaud's unasked question. Yes, she was done. Marie looked at Lilia. Lilia opened her briefcase and placed the file folder on the table. Placing the briefcase on the floor, she opened the folder. Ms. Suarez has informed my client, Mr. Greenwood, that she has divorced her husband, Mr. Diego Suarez, Lilia said. We couldn't have gotten married if I hadn't been divorced, Amanda snapped back. Ms. Banks, this is your final warning about your client, Marie warned. In fact, the divorce didn't become final until a week before their wedding, Lily continued. So, began Amanda, then restrained herself. If my client had known that Ms. Suarez was still legally married, he would not have continued his romantic relationship with her, Lilia continued. After all, he is a respected member of the faculty at the University of Louisiana at DeHardy. Respected? Snorted Amanda. These people don't care. Your students hate you. Ms. Suarez, please leave the auditorium immediately, Marie ordered. And he knew damn well I wasn't divorced, Amanda said, rising from her seat. Martin only shook his head. Amanda slammed the door with such force that the framed children's drawings shook. Your Honor, I apologize, Nicole muttered. Lilia also showed screenshots of Amanda's Facebook page, where she had claimed to be separated months before the actual divorce. She showed posts where Amanda had rejoiced in her pregnancy and then reported the loss of the baby. And, continued Lilia, showing the canceled check that Diego had paid to Dr. Roger Pillier for Amanda's surgery. Lilia also referred the matter to Dr. Melanie LeBlanc. Dr. LeBlanc met with Dorothy Suarez, asking her about her feelings about her parents' divorce, how she felt about Mr. Martin and now her father. Ms. Banks's client is asking the court to return Dorothy to a happy, loving home. In fact, it appears she is already in a happy, loving home, Lilia said. Your Honor, as both you and Ms. Banks know, I do my best to provide childcare. I have 4 children myself, and their happiness is paramount to me. The minor daughter expressed ill feelings toward Mr. Greenwood. She hated him and blamed him for the breakdown of her parents' marriage, she said. And if I had known, I would never, muttered Martin quietly. He fell silent when Lilia touched his hand. Lilia then listed on her fingers all of Amanda's deceptions. She claimed she was already divorced, then claimed to be pregnant, but without any documentation to prove it. Then reported the loss of her child, again without any supporting documentation, Lilia said. Dorothy, her child from a previous marriage, clearly unhappy in a home with her mother and stepfather. Ms. Banks? See if your client can control herself and is ready to act like an adult, Marie said. Nicole stood up on wobbly legs and walked out of the small office. Martin looked at the drawings again. The one on the bottom left is yellow? Asked Martin. What's that? That's when we went to San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge at sunset, replied Marie, smiling. Rebecca saw the bridge, of course, but most of all she saw how God used the sun to frame the bridge and make it shine with real light. A child's view of the world, Martin agreed, shaking his head. Amanda walked back into the room. Pushing her lawyer, she offered an insincere apology. Before we go any further, there's one question that's been bugging me. Martin spoke up. Marie raised an eyebrow. Lilia clenched her jaws. Nicole looked at him, and Amanda looked away. How the hell did you recognize me? Asked Martin to Amanda. Ah? At the grocery store? I mean, I lost 80 pounds of weight, lost my Coke bottle glasses, got a haircut. How did you recognize me? He continued. Oh, I saw you in your nice shoes and asked my cousin Christina, who works as a cashier there, who you were, Amanda admitted. You always paid with your American Express Gold, so she knew you had money. Oh, Martin said. Anything else, Mr. Greenwood? Asked Marie. No, Your Honor, Martin replied calmly. Nicole and Amanda could offer no defense. Lilia, with a quick glance at Martin, was denied counseling by Judge Marie Robichaud. Because Amanda had a stable job, Nicole's request for child support was also denied. I'm not even getting my car, complained Amanda to Nicole. Your Honor, she can have the car, Martin agreed. You? Asked Marie. Of course, there are still 52 payments to be made on it, at $428.63 apiece. She insisted we take out a 5-year loan, smiled Martin. Another burst of swearing escaped Amanda's lips. Again, Judge Marie Robichaud made Amanda leave the room. Fascinating, Lilia said as she and Martin walked out of the courthouse. They saw Amanda sullenly getting into a tattered 88th century Chevy Nova. Lilia looked at Martin. He wasn't a particularly handsome man, but he had attractive features. He dressed well, kept himself in shape, and was clean and well-groomed. Seriously, did you fall in love with Miss Potty Roth Howe? Asked Lilia, watching Amanda leave. She was the 3rd woman I made love to, Martin admitted, blushing hotly. I've been a fat nerd for most of my life, and all of a sudden I have this gorgeous blonde throwing herself at me. So, any others interested? May I suggest you do a little checking out first? Said Lilia, heading towards her minivan. Amanda Field walked out of the St. Elizabeth Parish Courthouse in a daze. She got into her Aunt Marple's old Chevy Nova and sat for a long time. Amanda had known since kindergarten that she was pretty. The boys fought over her all the time. Girls competed for the right to be her friend. Even the teachers let her skip homework and gave her the okay for classwork. By the time she got to high school, Amanda fully realized what her beauty could do. She didn't try out for cheerleading. Cheerleading came to her on its own. She wasn't vying to be class president. The student council invited her. Leaning forward during tests, unbuttoning her blouse across her chest, she received a passing grade. Smiling at the teacher gave her an excuse for missing homework. Jocks, nerds, go-goers, and teachers all tried to woo her. But Amanda never allowed them such liberties. Both boys and men received only promises of maybe. Amanda expected college to be an extension of high school. In many ways it was. Many professors, teaching assistants were willing to bend for Amanda Field. Many were willing to put up with substandard work, to accept lame excuses. In her sophomore year, Amanda registered for a computer analysis course and smiled with pleasure when a chubby man walked into her office. This teaching assistant would be her easy prey. But then he spoke. "My name is Mr. Greenwood. You will address me as Mr. Greenwood or Sir," Martin Greenwood said with an unexpectedly firm voice. "I don't receive visitors. If you are here, you will study. If you are not here, you will not study. It's simple. I don't give out gold stars for perfect attendance. I don't give practice tests. If you miss a test, you miss a grade. Only in the most extreme cases can this rule be waived. Hospitalization, death of a spouse, parent, sibling, or child. The flu? No excuse. Put on a diaper, and I'll put a trash can next to your desk for you." "Are you serious?" asked Amanda, opening her blue eyes wide. "Yes, ma'am, I am, and I hope you are too," he replied sharply. She leaned forward, letting him see her braless breasts with hard nipples, but it made no impression on him. By the time of the midterms, Amanda had earned a 23 in Mr. Greenwood's class. She dropped out of school, receiving an I for the semester. Later, Amanda found out she was pregnant. She didn't know exactly who the father was. Mitchell Goyes, Chris Dotson, Duncan Boudreau, and Andy Bro proposed marriage to her. When Amanda announced her pregnancy to Diego Suarez, he was silent for a long time before asking what she was going to do. She suggested marriage. "I don't think so. Thank you for the game. We have some nice parting gifts for you," Diego said. "What? Wait, what?" Amanda hissed confusedly. Amanda burst into tears. Diego's annoyed sigh caused her tears to flow. "You think I'm interested in playing your little games, Amanda?" Diego sighed. "You think I'm willing to run after you?" Amanda tore at the hearts of Mitchell, Chris, and the others when she left them. She had done everything she could to convince Diego to marry her. Their daughter Dorothy was a miracle baby, as confirmed by a DNA test showing that Diego was her father. After struggling to persuade Diego, Amanda got him to marry her and give Dorothy his last name. Amanda viewed Diego's reluctant consent as her victory. From the moment she declared herself the winner in their contest of wills, she continued to strive for more victories. The first conflict centered around the purchase of the house that Diego had won. Amanda wanted a huge house on Baylor Lake in Louisiana, but Diego smiled and asked how she was going to pay for it, given her small salary. Amanda had to admit defeat in that instance to Diego. They settled into a cozy house in Kimball, Louisiana, a middle-class suburb for middle-class families with average income and values. The next controversy arose over breast augmentation surgery. Diego's denial of sex failed to convince Amanda. He regularly reminded her that she wasn't particularly fond of doing it. So she decided to trick Diego by saying it was a 2-ball ligation surgery. Diego did not want to have children at all and offered to pay for Amanda's 2-ball ligation surgery. This lifestyle continued throughout their 8-year marriage. Then Diego broke through and confessed his feelings to Amanda. From that point on, Amanda walked all over Diego like a rug whenever she felt like it. One day she saw a well-dressed man in the supermarket. She recognized the shoes and realized it was unusual for her husband, who preferred work boots or old sneakers. They were leather loafers from a well-known brand, and the khakis were high quality too. The polo shirt had the Polo logo hanging from the left breast. "Dorothy, get us a basket, please," Amanda said, approaching her cousin Christina, who was standing at the register. "Hi, honey. How are you doing?" Christina smiled. "Do you know who that is?" Amanda asked, pointing to a man who was picking apples. "Is that him?" "Oh, yes. Martin Greenwood," replied Christina. "Mommy, I found one," Dorothy exclaimed, pushing the grocery cart. "He's a teacher at ULD, American Express. Gold American Express. Christina began to explain without paying attention to the shopper. "Excuse me," the gray-haired woman finally intervened when Amanda and Christina showed no desire to end their conversation. Seducing Martin Greenwood was easy enough. Divorcing Diego Suarez hadn't been too difficult either. Amanda was glad that Diego resisted and tried to prevent the divorce, because it meant that he loved her. Martin had a beautiful house in a great neighborhood and a stylish new pickup truck. It was all more in keeping with her style. When she wanted a new couch, Martin bought it. She dreamed of a Lexus, and that too showed up in their garage. When she wanted a koi pond in the backyard, he set it up for her. "I love you," she said. "I love you," Martin replied fervently, and the things he did to prove it. Now, driving the old Chevy Nova north on Highway 19 to their trailer, where she and her cousin Christina lived, Amanda wondered how she could have failed so badly. She was still just as beautiful, with flawless skin, big blue eyes and blonde hair, and her breasts were still magnificent. The flirting with Stephen had moved from hints and playful touches to bolder steps. The man was fascinated by her impressive breasts, and Amanda was grateful to Dr. Waxman for making her breasts look natural. Amanda informed Martin that she was going to have an unforgettable night of passion with Stephen. But Martin refused to let that happen, much to Amanda's surprise. He said he loved her. Martin's indifference to her not making him breakfast and his refusal to kiss her that morning made Amanda very angry. At 6:30 that same evening, Amanda hurried to the women's restroom at work to change. Short skirt, open blouse, high heels, and underwear. Stepping out into the employee parking lot, Stephen stood next to her Lexus by the driver's door. "Girl, let me take a ride behind the wheel of this cool car?" he asked. At the restaurant, when the waitress asked what they were going to drink, Stephen ordered his food, much to Amanda's annoyance. "What?" Stephen asked. "I haven't even looked at the menu," she snapped back. "So, you're going to get your food 10 minutes earlier than I did, and I'm going to have to sit and watch you eat." "Oh shit, sorry. I thought you already knew what you wanted," Stephen replied. "No, I told you my husband doesn't eat here," Amanda said. The waitress brought drinks and asked what Amanda would like to order. She sighed and chose the cheese enchiladas. As expected, Stephen's food came earlier than Amanda's dinner. At that moment, a scuffle broke out outside the restaurant. Amanda paid no attention to it. "Playing hoops with your boys, you bastard!" yelled the enraged woman. "Nicole!" shrieked Stephen. Amanda ducked, hearing the clang of metal. Stephen didn't. An off-duty police officer helped prevent further confrontations. His wife called the police and ambulance, and the policeman handled Nicole. When Amanda tried to pay the bill, her card was declined. The next one was, too. She found the last card in her bag, with her maiden name on it. $295 for an iced tea? She said. "You'd better take water next time. Or do you take money at every turn?" She left Stephen's half-eaten meal and her own untouched. It seemed that every eye in the building was looking at her, not because of envy or lust, but because she was sitting at the table where the abuse had happened. She avoided meeting gazes with the hostess and the customers waiting for a table. Stepping outside, Amanda experienced another shock. Her beautiful car was not in the parking lot. The keys were in her purse. Stephen hadn't left them in the car. They hadn't fallen to the asphalt of the parking lot. They were in her purse. She rummaged through her pockets and found her cell phone. She dialed Martin's number. Nothing. She dialed it again. Again, nothing. A man came out of the restaurant and asked Amanda if she needed help. Behind the young man's back, Amanda saw the face of an annoyed woman. That fact made her feel a little better, a little more in control. Ignoring his companion's protests, the young man allowed Amanda to make a phone call. "Martin, my car, it's been stolen," Amanda shouted, "and my phone doesn't work. Oh, and my credit cards and—" "Wow, it's not easy being you, is it?" said Martin. "Whose phone is that?" "This guy. I'm at Casa Ole. He let me use his phone. Amanda said, looking away from the man's inquisitive gaze. Maybe he'll let you spend the night at his house too, since you don't have a house anymore, Martin said, and hung up. Amanda screamed with anger. His companion snatched the cell phone out of Amanda's hands before Amanda could hurl it in anger. Never let some ignorant bitch, the woman hissed at the young man, pulling him back into Casa Ole. 911 went off on Amanda's phone, and the Dehard Police Department sent out a patrol car. They filled out the information and quickly radioed it in. The male officer wasn't too inclined to transport Amanda home from the restaurant, but his partner overcame his objections. Man, am I here? Alone? Maybe someone will take pity on me, you hear? Hissed the woman, opening the back door of the police cruiser for Amanda. Ma'am, watch your head, you hear? On top of that, the female officer continued, getting behind the wheel, we need to get her husband's badge numbers. Yeah, the male officer grumbled. Amanda's key didn't fit the door to her house. Opening the door, Martin, her husband, refused her entry. Then, to her embarrassment, Martin revealed that he had her car. It was parked in the garage. Further embarrassing Amanda, the police officers had to persuade her husband to allow her to enter the house and gather her clothes. Her anger and embarrassment dissipated when she entered her bedroom and saw the cardboard boxes. Now, weeks after that dark night, Amanda pulled up to the trailer and sighed heavily. She had excused herself from work for the meeting at the judge's office. Digging through her drawers, she found her prettiest dress and ironed it. There wasn't a single rip in her tights, and she even shined her shoes. In the mirror, Amanda saw herself as a winner, a victor, a champion. Now in the same mirror, Amanda was faced with a battered loser. The beautiful dress looked wrinkled and tattered on her. The 4-inch heels were well polished, but looked cheap. Fortunately, the tights had survived the ill-fated day. As she rolled the hose down, her large fingernail caught and punctured a tear. The budding romance between her and Stephen faded the moment Nicole stuck her knife into Stephen. 2 weeks after the incident, Stephen quit his job. Amanda was not sorry to see Stephen go. Fortunately, Amanda still had a job. Her screaming tirade the day she was served nearly cost her that job. Fortunately for Amanda, her boss was a divorced woman who knew all too well the roller coaster of emotions divorce could cause. Damn it, this just isn't right, Amanda sobbed as she sat naked on the corner of the bed. When Christina came in from her day shift at Burns & Burns, she smelled macaroni and cheese and sliced hot dogs. When she and Amanda were kids, it was their favorite meal. Their mothers would take a box of macaroni and cheese, boil the noodles and hot dogs together. Then they would take the hot dogs out and cut them up while the margarine melted into the hot noodles. Then they would put the hot dog pieces and a packet of powdered cheese into the noodle pot. Now, as adults, Amber and Christina would make this dish when they were feeling down and needed a little comfort. Christina or Amanda would make this dish, put on their comfy pajamas, and gorge themselves on all their problems. Dorothy, Amanda's daughter, declared the dish disgusting and refused to eat it. Diego, too, said it was the most disgusting dish a white mother could serve her family. Even from the smell of dinner, one could guess Amanda's mood, but Christina was shocked and horrified at the sight of Amanda. Her cousin was still beautiful, with large breasts and golden hair. But there was no life or hope in her eyes as she mechanically spread food with a spoon onto plastic plates. I lost, Amanda muttered when Christina asked what was wrong.